Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I am Paul John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Kevin McCluskey, who is streaming from Budapest in Hungary. How are you keeping, Kevin?
Hi, I'm doing well, Paul. Thank you. How about yourself?
I'm very well. I'm looking forward to today's game. Obviously, the team lines have been announced. We have 60 or 70 messages already on the comments section. I think there's about 100 of you waiting for us to start at 2:30. Thankfully, it was Kevin McCluskey who was with us because his timekeeping is better than the other Kevin Graham. Hail to everybody who is tuning in. Kevin knows I'm just having a wee dig at him. He's fine. William Martin, let us know where you're watching A Celtic State of Mind from. Which part of the world are you watching from? We're going to be looking at the lineups, obviously, today of both sides, and a wee look ahead to how you think we're going to fare. This is, in fact, Kevin, one game prior to the biggie, the League Cup final against Rangers. And obviously, all the talk leading into this one was around Kyogo, whether or not he was going to make it, and spoke about him at the presser. I think you called it. I think you said you wanted O to start today, even if Kyogo was, 95% fit, put him on the bench, keep him fresh. Is that your thinking?
That was my thinking, yeah. I will kind of hold my hands up and say that on the predicted team I'd put out on the blog, I had Kyogo in the starting lineup, but only because I felt that's how Ange would do it. Because he seems to be favouring Kyogo as the number one striker, and I just felt, Ange's thinking might be if Kyogo's 90% fit, he'll start him because he's the number one forward. But my personal view would be, if there's any doubt at all, just take him out, wrap him in cotton wool, keep him for the big game next week, give him the extra week to recover and be fully fit for that game. And with all due respect to Aberdeen, they're a side that's not been in great form at the moment. We're at home, 60,000 fans behind us. It's a perfect chance to give O his first start and let him see what he can do as a starter. He came off the bench last week, scored his first goal, so confidence will be high with him as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a cup final coming at the end of the week. And if O goes out there and puts in a performance today, then he gives Ange a headache as to which one of two informed strikers does he pick.
A very good headache. Yeah, for Indeed. Sure. I mean, you're talking about O making his first start today. Obviously, we need to decide on what the chant's going to be. I've seen so many coming through in the comments section. William, I'm going to be sharing the starting lineup in just a moment, but O is starting as Celtic follower. Suggests here, good to see O starting. I'd probably take Maeda off at half-time to preserve him for next weekend. I mean, no matter who you are, I think there's going to be one eye on the game next weekend. No disrespect to Aberdeen, but it's a cup final. Obviously, we need to take care of our opposition today before we can fully concentrate on the Rangers game. However, I'm pretty sure they'll be looking at that before we get stuck in. Kevin, there's been some really big talking points this week, one of which was the big spat between Chris Sutton and Michael Beale. And yesterday I was talking to Kevin and our debut boy, Lloyd Jepson, all around the fact that it was only a few weeks ago we were getting told Ange was rattled. Wow. If a bit of Chris Sutton banter gets you rattled, then you've no hope, have you?
You're really not. I mean, with Chris Sutton, he's out there. He's laying the bait every time, and the usual suspects will bite in it. But the thing is, he lays the bait, but there's always something behind it as well. Mm-hmm. He's usually able to follow something up with a bit of substance. And I did like his retort the other day about Beale, having to do the Google search for his football career, his history, and where is it? It's non-existent. People in glass houses and all that.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, obviously, we sit here and criticise managers and players. And if anybody Googled us, Kevin, there's not going to be much on our football careers either. Chris Sutton.
There's a healthy football manager career there somewhere, but a real life one, no.
No, exactly. Chris Sutton, there's a couple of wee tales that, stick out for me. He was one of these guys who, as a player, absolutely loved him. And there was actually a picture recently, I put it up on Twitter yesterday or the day before, and it was a Champions League tankard that was picked up at one of the games about 20 years ago or whatever. I put it out on Twitter because for the life of us, we can't remember which game it was.
I was going to ask, did you ever find out which game it was? No.
Well, apparently it was the Juventus 4-3 game. Where Sutton scores a couple. He was brilliant that night. But somebody actually said, here it is, I remember the game, and this is the game it was. So that for me as a player, he was absolutely outstanding. And then I had the opportunity to meet him a few times. The first time was I was doing a bit of shadowing for BT Sport behind the scenes. He was on with Stevie Cragen, and is it Daryl Curry? Is it Daryl Curry? Yeah. And Ailey Barber was there as well. And basically, I was just observing Chris Sutton, and he was the first guy there, right? So he came into the area at New Douglas Park about 4 hours before he was due to go on live. He had a box file of research material, and he sat there in his own wee world researching every single player who was going to be involved in the game that night, as well as their form for the season, the whole shebang. And I remember looking at him going, wow, the level of research he was putting into that broadcast was unbelievable, Kevin, right? And then it goes on, and then like a click of a finger, he's the caricature that you know as Chris Sutton, winding people up, etc. But that comes with the research, that comes with the dedication and the articulate nature that he has. So if you try to go toe-to-toe with him, you know, you better be coming pretty well equipped, because he will give you an absolute tanking. And I think he done that this week and continues to do it as well.
He's definitely the one pundit that just talks the game up in Scotland so well every single time. And I'm not surprised to see that it's that level of research that goes into it, because if you listen to him in the games, he sounds very knowledgeable about everyone that's playing, and you get the feeling that some of the commentators are bluffing it through the games. They've not really got a clue who's out there, what they've done previously. Sutton can talk it up, and he does that really well. For someone that came from down south with no affiliation to Celtic or the Scottish game, he's one of our best ambassadors, I think, on the media circuit.
He is. I mean, Big Hartson, I think, does a good job of it as well, if I'm being honest. But yeah, just one-liners, and, you know, I do go back to a few of the stories that Simon Ferry tells on Open Goal about what Chris Sutton was like as a senior pro at Celtic, and the youngsters were coming through, and he basically ridiculed them and did all that. Character building, I think they called it back in the day. I don't think you're allowed to do that these days, but anyway. Let's have a look at the teams then, because we do have them. I'll be bringing both of the teams up, and we'll be running through them just to see what your thoughts are on them. Every time I put this out in the socials, people say, Ange picks the team, it doesn't matter what you think. I know, but we're allowed to have a wee opinion here and there, surely. So here is the starting lineup for Celtic. Joe Hart in goals, with Johnston, Carter Vickers, Starfelt and Taylor making up the defence. Big question around the midfield after the performance last week of Hatate and O'Reilly, and they have kept their starting places alongside McGregor. And then up top, the question has been answered, because O starts his first game for Celtic alongside Jota and Maeda. On the bench, very strong bench again. Bain, Kyogo, Haksabanovic, Abada, Kobayashi, Awata, Bernabe, Forrest and Ralston. Good to see the two fullbacks back on the bench. But you might be wondering where Aaron Moy is. And I was asking the WhatsApp group this morning whether or not there had been any mention of Moy, either in the presser or elsewhere. Apparently, he has been in for a scan. I can't say for sure what is wrong with him, which part of his body was being scanned, but obviously he's been rested. And let's hope he's back in time for selection for the League Cup final as well, because he's been astounding since the World Cup, Kevin.
He has been. We've spoken about him before, I think, in every show since the World Cup, that he's just come back a completely different player to the one that left. He was picking up form before he left, and he absolutely deserved his inclusion in the Australian squad. I don't think anybody's expected the performances that he put in out at the World Cup, and then the performance level just to have kicked on to another level again since he's come back. And he's definitely, for me, gone from being a sub, a reserve player almost, to being someone that pretty much deserves to be in the starting 11 now. So yeah, it's a blow that he's missing today, but you just got to hope again it's going to be precautionary. There's no point in risking him in a game like this when you've got somebody like Matt O'Reilly that can come in, who last weekend did seem to take his opportunity by putting in a pretty good performance when he was on. So it's again, it's a similar one that we've got up front. It's a great headache to have of which of those good players, which of those starting level players do you not play?
That's a great dilemma. The other player, of course, that's dropped out completely is David Turnbull. And again, unless anyone can tell me in the comment section, I don't have anything verified or confirmed in relation to his fitness. But he was the subject of conversation leading into last week's game, Kevin, and also in the aftermath of the game, because I think he'd done enough to force himself into the starting 11, to be fair. But then his performance against St Mirren wasn't his best. And by the way, he might have retained the jersey if fit, had it not been for the performances of Hatate and O'Reilly, but he's dropped out again. I'm not hoping anybody has an injury, but hopefully there's nothing else involved in that, because he started last week, David Turnbull.
Yeah, he did. There's actually a few comments that have come in, and it's right. Ange did mention that he'd picked up a knock, so that's why Turnbull's not in. But he did disappoint last weekend, so I'm not sure he would have been in anyway, even if he was fit, because, and again, this is one we've spoken about, and Laura made the point really well a couple of weeks back, that Turnbull at the moment seems to be a sub for us, and that's his role in the team. He doesn't seem to have the qualities that Ange needs or wants of a starting player. He's not got the same level of tempo, I think, the kind of aggressive approach that the likes of Hatate and O'Reilly and even Moy have got when they're on the ball. He's a bit slower, I think we would say. But he's the kind of player that can come in and just see us through the last 10, 15 minutes of a game and take the others out. So that seems to be his role. He doesn't convince at the moment when he starts. So this is why I would say I'm not even sure he would start if he was fit. And then that leads me to the thought of then, where does his long-term future lie? Is he happy to be a sub for us going forward? Because you're thinking, if we bring in anyone else in the summer in the midfield, it moves him further down the list. So I think Turnbull in his next couple of appearances for us has really got to shine if he's wanting to really kick on and push for a place in the team for the remainder of this season, beginning of next.
It's interesting because in terms of his age, he's in the same bracket as Tony Ralston, for example. I know their careers have been different. Ralston's come through the ranks. He's obviously gone through a period of, where he was basically completely out the picture. He could have disappeared from the scene and ended up elsewhere, and not many Celtic fans at that time, prior to Ange coming to the club, would have batted an eyelid. However, he seems to be the type of player, Kevin, who will give his all, put 100% in every time he's called upon. But at the same time, if he's out the squad or on the bench, I don't think he's going to give Ange too many headaches. I feel that the situation with Turnbull would be slightly different, in that if he's not playing, he's looking at his international career, he's looking at some of his contemporaries who have maybe moved on to bigger wages, etc. And if he's not getting first-team football, he himself might want to move on, but let's just hope that he stays and he's part of a strong Celtic squad. We will be running through that team in more detail, but let's get some comments from those who are watching all over the world. Xander Mack, first goal today. Have you got a bet on it? What's the odds of getting the first goal? And what's the odds of us getting about 10 different songs on the comments section? I don't know if you're going to get a rendition of any of them from us too. Pigeon M, come on, boys. You sure, Kev?
There will be no renditions.
All right.
I'm not as brave as Laura to put my voice out like that.
Laura did sing a couple of weeks ago, didn't she?
Yeah.
Another 3 points today, says Pigeon M. Let's hope so. It sets us up nicely for the cup final. And we also have Juhalo LP, who's already given us a wee tune, which I'm not going to sing. William Martin thought Kobo would have got a game, Kobayashi. We've not seen much of him. There's a group of players, Kobayashi, Awata. We've not seen a great deal of them. I also threw Haksabanovic into that mix as well, because they're players, Kevin, that not quite unknown quantities to us fans, but we've not seen a great deal of them. Haksabanovic being a player who we've seen a wee bit more of. But these guys could play a big part in the second half of this season.
I think they will play a big part in the second half of the season, yeah. Again, when I was looking at the team for last week, I think, if I remember rightly, I think I had Kobayashi as being in the starting lineup because that was a personal thing for me. I wanted to see him in there. I felt a cup game at home again was a good opportunity to get him on there, get him some minutes, because it's going to be difficult to split Starfelt and Carter Vickers as the number one pairing between now and the end of the season. But Ange has mentioned it himself as well. as we progress towards the end of the season and we get the games coming in thick and fast, we're playing maybe 2-3 games a week at times, the depth that we've got in the squad is going to come to the fore at that point. And guys like Kobayashi will come in and get a game here and there. Iwata will start to get more minutes. Haksabanovic, I'm sure, will get more minutes as well. And you're rhyming off here international quality players that aren't getting a game, that are going to come in. So when that happens, it's not going to be like seasons before when changes would be made and the quality level will drop off on the side a wee bit. You're actually replacing quality with quality. And guys that you'd like to think have got something to prove and got a bit of hunger about them, that they're going to come in and kind of raise performance levels to try and maintain a place in the team once they get them. So yeah, absolutely. I think they're going to be huge players for us in the remainder of the season.
It's incredible though, Kevin, what you're talking about there, the replacements having a standard and having a level that, they might be short in game time, but in terms of where they are as players, international players, they can step in and you know that they've got the quality. And you compare that to the team that was inherited by Ange 18 months ago, the team that he took into the first stages, the qualifying rounds of the Champions League against Midtjylland, and, having to call upon players, to make their debut. Young Dane Murray made his debut in the Champions League qualifier. To be fair, Ralston was the only right back we had at the club, so he played, and he proved to be a fantastic addition to Angie's squad. But it just shows you how great he's done. Every single transfer window that Ange has been involved in, people always going about, are you stronger when you come out of it as you are when you go into it? I think arguably every time we've gone into a transfer window, we've come out stronger in terms of the squad. Not every player you're going to bring in, like Bernabe, for example, was not going to replace Greg Taylor. That's not why he was purchased. He wasn't purchased to replace Greg Taylor, but he was certainly brought in to compete with him, to try and push him for the jersey. It was interesting the other day, we spoke to Jackie McNamara about Greg Taylor and also the inverted fullback position. Kevin, I don't know if you got a chance to listen to the interview, but it was a wonderful insight from Jackie talking about the way that Greg has taken to Angie's style, and Jackie would have loved to play under him as well, he said.
Yeah, I've actually not listened to that one yet, I must admit, but I'm not surprised to hear that Jackie would have liked to play under Ange, because he was a really classy player as well, McNamara. He had that ability that he could play full back, centre back at a push, right mid, centre mid, really classy, comfortable in the ball, kind of player that would thrive doing what Ange wants his right full backs to do. Excellent going forward. I remember sitting watching the games with him and Simon Donnelly on the right hand side for a couple of seasons. Just it was the triangle passes they were playing to each other, the pass and move, the kind of synchronicity they had.
Yeah,
it was excellent to watch. And Jackie was a player when he was on his game. And, you could really imagine that he would just slot into that team just now, and with his leadership qualities as well, he'd be a key player.
He would thrive. That was actually the jersey that Jackie first wore when he signed for Celtic. That was the home jersey at that time. And when you dig into his career, he briefly mentioned that he had a really bad leg break at the age of 15, Kevin, when he was playing for Geerdok, which is in your neck of the woods, not Hungary.
That's right.
Stirlingshire, a really good, strong kind of boys club. And he broke his leg, and at that time he was back and forward training with Arsenal at that stage.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Didn't know he was with Arsenal or had been training with them. I knew his time at Geerdok because as a Tullabuddy boy, I'm sure his teams Geerdok used to come and play against. It was Tullabuddy Hearts was the team in my wee neck of the woods in Forth Valley. I must actually have watched him play in the public park as a teenager, and didn't know who he was at the time. Can't really remember or say with any clarity that I did see him, but I must have at some point, and then he's gone on to have the career that he had.
Brilliant. But they were a great side. I don't know if they still are, but they were a brilliant team at that boys club level. You never ever wanted to draw them in the Scottish Cup. Teams like Geerdok, Tiny, Edina Hibs, Hutchie Vale, try and avoid them if you're a wee boy for High Valleyfield. So Peter McGlone, massive call from Ange starting. Moy must be rested. Yes, he has a niggling injury, which unfortunately has ruled him out. And Joe Hamilton, Chris Sutton is a legend. This is interesting because you get the two ends of the scale, Kevin. So Joe reckons he's a legend. I agree with you, Joe. And then we have Lee Ryan Vert. As much as I enjoy seeing Beale getting bodied, I actually agree with the assessment of Sutton as a pundit. Well, we're all entitled to our opinions, but I think he's one of the best out there in relation to, as you say, talking up Scottish football. But he can hold his own regardless of whether or not it's Scottish football, because he obviously is a pundit down south as well, and I think he does a fantastic job. When you're looking at the right back position, Johnson, he's got into that habit now, Kevin, where you barely mention him after the game because he comes in, he gives you the performance, he's been really consistent. He doesn't do anything that's, sticks in your mind in terms of being bad, like giving the ball away, losing possession, any of that stuff. And, you've now got Ralston on the bench who will be wanting more game time. So it's a brilliant battle to have at the right-hand side.
It is. The point that you're making with Johnson, I've just thought of it just now, is that he reminds me very much of Joe Ledley in that sense. That Ledley used to put in kind of a 7 out of 10 performance every single week. He just went out there, he did what he had to do, he did it with very little fuss, came off the park, job done. And Johnson seems to be that kind of player at right back for us. He defends very well for me, he reads the game well, he's made his few interceptions when he's had to, he covers the space well, he gets forward well enough, he supports Jota or whoever it is that happens to be in the right at that particular time. Maybe he could improve a little bit in his final ball or his crossing. Maybe that's not his strongest area of his game, but he's come in as an outsider to the game in Scotland. He's slotted in perfectly, and we're not even talking about the boy that he's replaced anymore because there's no need to. Johnson's come in and he's taken over that mantle. He's come in seamlessly to right back. But yeah, also great that you've got Anthony Ralston coming back from injury now as well, because he's another one that's had a really strong season again. And it's great to just have the competition for places. 2 first-team level players pretty much going for every position in the team now, which is the thing that gives you so much confidence going into every game, that if it's not working for whatever reason, you can make a like-for-like change and you're not losing quality, and you're pretty sure that the player that's coming on is going to take us on to the next level that we need to go to.
No, for sure. And like you were saying there, obviously Juranovic left for Pastures New, playing his football in Germany, as is another right back that was sold in, Jeremy Frimpong. I was reading reports during the week there, Kevin, that they're talking 50 million quid for a move for Frimpong. It's incredible. Obviously, we'll have, I think it's a 20% sell-on clause with Frimpong, so good work there. But it goes back to a conversation we've had so many times on Acsom, where we ask the question, what is European success for Celtic? I don't think anybody in the comment section or anyone within Axom's team would say European success is winning the Champions League, because we know that there are so many other factors, Kevin, that are kind of piled up against you when it comes to a team from Scotland trying to compete at that level. But what is European success for Celtic? And also a conversation Colin Watt and I had some time ago on Acsom about having a model where you were able to keep for a little bit longer the group of players who might develop into that team, who'd click it at that moment in your history, and they are good enough. Because we have had the players, Frimpong, I didn't rate him as a right back, incidentally, but obviously he had incredible ability as an offensive threat. And I think his final ball has improved since he's left Celtic, which was the one part of his game that you thought to yourself, if he just gets that right, it's a difference between being a very good player and then an exceptional player. And then all the other players that we've seen at Celtic Park who have left for Pastures News, who have actually gone elsewhere and won the Champions League, Kevin. But it does bring that back to my mind when I see a player like Frimpong, who, like Van Dijk before him, and Wanyama, Fraser Forster, all these big players who, had we got them all, and we got them all at the sweet spot, then you think to yourself, wow, that's a mouth-watering proposition in Europe.
It would have been, we've had players over a 5 to 10 year spell that if they'd all been there at the same time, we would have had a fantastic squad for European football. It does hurt that we're not able to keep players for longer. That the lure of going to Germany, in Frimpong's case, getting probably 3, 4, 5 times his wages that he was on, and that'll be obviously a big motivation for anyone to leave. But yeah, it's a kicker that we haven't been able to keep the players. I'm not sure how we solve it though in the short term, because I think a move to Scotland is a very hard sell for a player who's got big ambitions, unless we're taking them like a Matt O'Reilly from a lower level, and we can bring him up and we can give him the platform. But yeah, it's an absolute discussion point for another time, I think, because Celtic's ambitions in Europe should be a whole lot higher than they are. We should be looking to be a Champions League team. We should be looking to be a team that can get second place in almost any Champions League group, I think, by now at this stage. But we've kind of mismanaged things for the previous decade, I think, in terms of how we dealt with transfers and bringing players through. But we're a massive club, and if we can get the right strategy in place, which is all about getting the scouting right and bringing the players in, giving young players a platform that actually they know that they can come from the youth team and make it into the first team and make an impression, then it doesn't matter how many players we sell every summer. We know that there's a conveyor belt of players coming through. It's a long process though, and I think we're starting it now with Ange, but it's definitely one of those ones where you go, it's a 5-year plan or it's a 10-year plan. And we should have started it 5 years ago. So we're behind the curve a little bit. But, we are a club that has massive scope. And if we can get lucky in the way that somebody like Frimpong moves on for 50 million, which was a fee that sounds bizarre when you think back at how he played with a good player, but never a £50 million player. If we're getting a sizable chunk of that fee coming our way, then, those are the deals we need to be making, and then reinvesting that money in the team. And for the time being, you think with Ange, actually, we've got a manager who can do it, and we'll do it wisely.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way I'm looking at it is, say we were to ask and throw this out to the commenters, everybody that's watching 500 strong this afternoon, or 800 or 900 during a weekday or whatever, and we say to you, in the last decade, which players do you think are Champions League quality players? What you might get is a figure of maybe 6 players that have played for Celtic, who you would say were that type of player, maybe more. And I think that if you then look at the fact that, okay, why then, when there's 2 transfer windows every season, have we gone through 20 transfer windows and there's only 6? And I think that's the question. So it's then a point of looking at the recruitment and saying, well, since Ange has come in, he's had 4 transfer windows. And potentially in 2 or 3 years, we're going to be looking at the players he's brought in and says there's 6. Just in 4 transfer windows, 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And I think that is key. The recruitment is key. And I think we've got the right man at the helm with Ange Postecoglou.
I think so. I mean, if you look at the team that's playing today, Hatate's got the ability to be a Champions League level player. I think he still needs to improve in his consistency at that level, but he's only 23, I think, and he's only been playing professionally, really, for the last couple of seasons. So he could make it. Jota can definitely make it. He's another one that's got that ability. You can imagine him playing for a Liverpool type team that goes out and plays that kind of football that he enjoys. So there's 2 straight away. Carter Vickers could make it at another team.
Yeah,
he's Champions League level. He's that solid defender. And then Kyogo, who obviously isn't playing today, is another one who just needs that wee bit more improvement, wee bit of consistency at the top level. But he's another one who could make it. So within, as you say, within 4 transfer windows, there's maybe 4 players that are already, if not there, knocking on the door of being a Champions League level player.
Yeah,
and that's impressive given some of the dross that we have signed in the previous 10 years worth of transfer windows.
No, you're right though. It's a whole podcast in itself, and it's one that you and I might have to run at some point. Welcome to the show, Magnet 67 Afternoon Acsom team, watching live from sunny Doha. We play our usual game. We win. I'm going 5-0 for Celtic. It opens up the question to Kevin McCluskey. What is your prediction for this afternoon, Kev?
My prediction is I'm going to go for 3-0.
3-0 from Celtic. I think Aberdeen will be galvanised by Barry Robson, a player that I think we both enjoyed whilst he was at Celtic. What is my score prediction is what is being asked by Hoggy Boy 1967. I'm going to go 2-0. 1 each? No, 2-0. 2-0 for
No.
Celtic. 100% Celtic will win today if we turn up, and I think we'll win 2-0. But we're going to have an Aberdeen side who will be well drilled by the ex-Celt Barry Robson, and they will turn up to the party, but Celtic will have too much quality. I would like to see getting on the score sheet again, not to give Andrew a headache, just to give the boy confidence so that, if Kyogo isn't 100% for the cup final, we've got someone who is going in there firing on all cylinders. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved in the chat before the game. There's a lot of confidence in that comment section, so let's go and check out the action. We'll be back at half-time. All that's left for me to say, Kevin McCluskey, thank you again for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.